You reacted. Maybe it was small, a tone shift, a comment you did not need to make, a look that said more than you meant. And you knew it the second it left you. That was mine. That was given for free. Most men treat reaction as honest. It is not honest. It is expensive. Every time you react, you hand someone a piece of information they did not earn and cannot give back. You show them what moves you. You show them what threatens you. You show them exactly which angle to approach from the next time they need something. And there will be a next time. Machiavelli was precise about this. He wrote that the prince who reveals himself reveals the shape of his undoing. He was not talking about weakness. He was talking about visibility. The man who can be read can be predicted. The man who can be predicted can be managed. And the man who can be managed has already lost the room before the conversation starts. Silence is not coldness. It is not distance. It is the refusal to let someone else set the terms of your exposure. There are 7 tactics, not principles. Tactics. Things you can use tomorrow in the rooms you are already in with the people who are already watching. You are in the middle of a disagreement. Someone has just said something that is not accurate about a decision you made, about your judgment, about something you built or tried to build. And the first thing you want to do is correct the record. That is 2. Most men believe the first person to speak in a conflict controls the conflict. They have it exactly backwards. The first person to speak is the first person to show what they are carrying. Every word out of your mouth in the opening seconds of a confrontation is a map of what the confrontation means to you. Your urgency tells them how much you care. Your word choice tells them what you are afraid they believe. Your defense tells them where the real target is. And once they have the map, they do not need to improvise. They navigate. Silence in those first moments is not agreement. It is not weakness. It is the refusal to hand them the map before you have read it yourself. When something requires a response, the response can wait. 15 seconds. 15 seconds of silence is an eternity in a conflict. It shifts the weight of the room. Suddenly they are watching you, wondering if you heard, wondering if what they said landed too far, wondering if they should walk it back. In those 15 seconds, they are managing their own reaction to your non-reaction. They are working harder than you are, and you have not said a word. This is not a trick. It is an understanding of how attention works. Whoever needs the other person to respond first has the higher level of need in that moment. High need is visible. Visible need is leverage for the person watching it. When you break silence first, you signal that you need the resolution more than they do. And that changes everything before the argument has even started. Here is what this looks like when it is done right. Someone challenges you in a meeting. Your approach, your reasoning, your numbers. The room watches. You look at the person. You do not rush. You let the silence sit long enough that the room starts to feel it. Then you respond. Not to defend, to address. With the energy of someone for whom the challenge was the least surprising thing in the room. If you have ever spoken too fast in a conflict and regretted it before you finish the sentence, drop a comment below. Not to tell me the story. Just say yes, because I want you to know you are not the only one who has paid that bill. The silence is not the absence of a response. It is the response, and it lands heavier than anything you could have said. That is what silence in the first moment actually does. But silence alone is not enough if you do not know who you are being silent with first. And this is the one that drains men more than any other kind of interaction. You are explaining yourself to someone who made up their mind before you started talking. You can feel it. The nodding that is not agreement. The listening that is not hearing. The expression that says, I am letting you finish, not because I am open, but because I have the patience to wait. And you keep going. Because maybe if you find the right sentence, the right angle, the right amount of evidence, something will shift. It will not. And the more you talk, the more you confirm to them that their opinion of you is the one that matters. This is a specific pattern in how the brain processes challenge. When someone has already formed a conclusion, every argument you make gets processed as a threat to their judgment, not as new information. Their brain is not evaluating what you are saying. It is building a case for why they were right to begin with. The longer you argue, the stronger their position becomes, because defending a position makes it feel more true. Goleman wrote about this in the context of emotional flooding. Once someone is past a certain threshold of conviction, the part of the brain that processes new information is essentially offline. You are not talking to a thinking person. You are talking to a conclusion. And conclusions do not update in real time. There is a version of this you have lived recently, a conversation that went 15 minutes longer than it needed to, where you could feel yourself getting less convincing the more you said, where the other person's certainty seemed to grow in direct proportion to your effort. You were not losing on the merits. You were losing because the format does not produce the outcome you were chasing. People do not change their minds under pressure. They change their minds in private when the pressure is gone, when they can update without it feeling like defeat. Your argument, delivered with force and urgency, makes private updating feel like losing. So they do not do it. Your silence leaves space for them to move later without an audience watching. Say one thing. Make it clean. Leave it there. Not because you are conceding, because you understand something they do not yet, which is that the argument in that room is the least important version of the argument. The important version is the one they will have with themselves in quiet, when your restraint is the thing they keep returning to. Try this before the end of the week. One conversation where you feel the pull to keep pushing. Stop one sentence before you normally would. Just one. Watch what happens to the other person in the silence after. The reaction will tell you everything. Knowing when to stop is one thing. Knowing what to do with the decision after you have made it is something most men never figure out. People always underestimate this one. 3. And that underestimation is exactly the problem. You have made a decision. It may not be popular. It may not be fully understood by the people around you. And the pressure you are feeling is not to reconsider it. It is to explain it in enough detail that everyone feels included. That pressure feels like leadership. It feels like transparency and respect. It is one of the most reliable ways to undermine the authority of the decision you just made. When you explain a decision at length, you are broadcasting that it requires explanation, that it would not survive scrutiny without support, that you need the people around you to agree in order for the decision to feel real. Decisions that require extensive justification are decisions that are already losing ground, not because they are wrong, because the explanation creates the impression of doubt even when no doubt exists. Machiavelli understood what this costs. He wrote that the prince who always consults is the prince who reveals he cannot decide. The appearance of needing consensus is the appearance of weakness, regardless of how strong the underlying decision is. Think about the last time you watched someone over-explain something they had already decided. The decision was probably fine, but the explanation made you wonder, made you look for the holes, because clearly there were holes to worry about. Or why would they be working so hard to fill them? They handed people a shovel by telling them where to dig. The alternative is not to be dismissive. It is to anchor and move. State the decision once, clearly, then move to the next thing. If someone has a question, answer it once concisely. If they push back, acknowledge and hold. Understood. This is the direction. That is a complete sentence. It does not invite a counter-proposal. It does not signal that the decision is still in negotiation. It states where things are and orients everyone toward what comes next. There is probably someone in your life who over-explains every decision they make and cannot understand why they keep losing ground. Share this video with them, not because they need to be called out, because nobody ever told them that the explanation was the problem, not the decision. The result does not need an introduction. Neither does the decision. The third one is about what you say after deciding. The fourth one is about what happens before you say anything at all. The fourth one requires you to consider something uncomfortable, which is that some people need your reaction more than they need anything else you could give them. They are not wrong. They are not trying to hurt you. They are trying to confirm something about themselves by measuring the impact they have on you. And every time you give them the reaction, you confirm it. You tell them, yes, you have access. Yes, this angle works. Yes, I can be moved from this direction. And they file that information. Not consciously, but it is filed. And it will be used again the next time they need to feel that level of impact. This is not manipulation in the predatory sense. This is human beings seeking confirmation of significance through the most available channel. If the most available channel is your reaction, they will use it. Not because they are bad people, because it works. The moment it stops working, they find another channel. That is the entire mechanism. Understanding it changes what it means to react. Your reaction is not just an expression of how you feel. It is a resource that someone else is consuming. Every time you give it freely, you are feeding something that will come back hungry. Every time you withhold it, you are not being cold. You are removing the incentive structure that is producing the behavior you want to stop. Think about a pattern in your own life right now. A person or a type of situation that reliably pulls a reaction from you. Not the big dramatic ones, the small ones, the comment that always gets a visible response, the topic that always tightens your jaw, the moment that always makes you say something you immediately know was too much. Now think about what that pattern would look like if you removed your reaction from it entirely. Not by becoming distant, not by pretending it does not affect you, by genuinely deciding that your response belongs to you, not to them to trigger. What changes? Not the other person's behavior, not immediately. What changes is the economy of the interaction. And economic shifts change behavior more reliably than any argument ever will. Think about one pattern. One person, one situation, one recurring trigger where your reaction is costing you more than it returns. You do not need to share it. Just identify it. Hold it for a second. Because the recognition itself is the beginning of actually changing it. Most people never get this far. They stay in the reaction. You are already past that just by naming it. This is the one most men get wrong at exactly the wrong moment. 5. You have just won something. An argument, a negotiation, a position. Something went your way that did not have to. And you feel the pull to say something about it. Not to gloat, just to acknowledge it. To mark what happened. To make sure the other person understands what just occurred in this room. That pull is natural. Following it is how men lose what they just won. The win is complete the moment it happens. Every word you add after that is a withdrawal from the account you just filled. Acknowledging a win out loud signals that you needed it seen. And needing it seen says more about your level of security than the win itself ever could. Think about the people in your professional life whose wins you actually remember. Not because they announced them, because they moved past them, because they treated what happened as the baseline, not the ceiling. The win was never in doubt to them, and that absence of visible relief is what made the win carry real weight. Now think about the people whose wins you also remember, but for a different reason. The ones who needed you to acknowledge it. The ones who brought it up again 3 days later. The ones who needed both of you to be keeping score. One of those people you respect. One of them you know exactly how to manage. If you are in a season of grinding right now, where wins are hard to come by and staying quiet after them feels almost impossible, this channel was built for that version of you. Subscribe if this is what you want, waiting for you each week. Not motivation, not hype, the mechanics of what actually works in the rooms you are actually in. After a win, the most powerful thing you can do is treat the win as ordinary. Not because it was easy, because that is the signal that it was expected. The man who celebrates loudly tells the room what he was afraid might not happen. The man who moves quietly tells the room he already knew how this would go. Staying quiet after a win is discipline. What comes next is harder. It is about what happens when someone is wrong about you and the wrong impression is already costing you something. 6. And if you have ever spent real emotional energy trying to convince someone of who you are, this section is going to land differently. There is a version of defending yourself that feels like integrity. You know what you stand for. Someone is misrepresenting it, and you feel the obligation to correct the record. Not for ego, because accuracy matters and you are being misread. That instinct is right about the goal. It is wrong about the method. Character cannot be argued into existence. Not in the room where the argument is happening, not with the person who has already formed the impression. You can spend an hour laying out evidence of who you are, and the person across from you will leave that conversation remembering that you spent an hour defending yourself. Not what you said, the fact that you said it. The defense becomes the data point, because people who are secure in who they are do not need to argue for it. They trust that time and behavior will do the work. The urgency to defend is itself a signal that you are not fully settled in the thing you are defending, and that signal lands louder than the defense ever could. Machiavelli was direct about this. He wrote that a prince who must repeatedly prove his strength has already revealed that he is not strong. Strength is what you do when no one is issuing the challenge. Character is the same. It is the accumulation of behavior across time, not the assertion made in a single conversation. You have been in a situation where someone had the wrong read on you, and you tried to correct it verbally, and the more you tried, the more entrenched the wrong read became. Because they were no longer evaluating your argument, they were watching someone argue. And watching someone argue is not a strong image. The alternative requires more patience than most men are willing to give. It requires you to let the wrong impression sit while you continue to behave as you actually are. It requires trusting that behavior is more legible than argument over any meaningful stretch of time. I know this one is not easy to sit with, especially if you are in a season where the wrong impressions are costing you something real right now. If you need to stay on this one longer stay, the defense that lands is the one you never give. The character that sticks is the one you live quietly while someone else is loudly wrong about you. Most men stop at 6. They learn the tactics and think the work is done. It is not. The last one is where everything else either holds or falls apart. 7. Last one. And this is where all 6 of the previous tactics collapse into a single understanding. There are moments when silence is not a tactic. It is the complete answer, not the first move in a sequence, not a waiting strategy while you formulate the real response. The entire response. Most men never arrive at this. They can use silence strategically. They can deploy restraint when it is useful. But the full silence, the kind that requires no effort, that comes from a man who has genuinely stopped needing the other person to understand, to agree to update, that is something different. That kind of silence is not trained, it is arrived at, and the path to it runs through every failed attempt to control an outcome through words. Every conversation where you spoke and it made things worse, every defense that deepened the misunderstanding, every reaction that confirmed exactly what they suspected, all of it accumulates into a single education, which is that most of what you are trying to do with words would be better done or left undone in silence. The full silence is available in the moments when you most want to speak. when someone has said something genuinely wrong about you, when credit has been taken that was yours, when a decision has been misread in a room where it matters, when disrespect has been offered publicly and people are watching. Those are the moments where everything in you wants to set the record straight, and the full silence says the record does not need me to set it. Time sets the record. Behavior sets the record. And the energy I would spend correcting this impression is energy. The other version of me is spending on the actual work. This is not resignation. It is not accepting injustice. It is the recognition that your power is finite, and the choice of where to spend it is one of the most consequential decisions you make. Silently. Every day. This channel exists for the person who is done reacting to things that do not deserve the reaction, who is building something that requires full attention, not the fraction that survives after every triggered response. If that is, you subscribe. Not because the content is useful, because you already know somewhere you have not fully reached yet that this is the direction, and subscribing is just saying so out loud. The man who has arrived at the full silence does not look like he is holding something back. He looks like he has nothing left to prove. That is the difference. Holding back is effort. Having nothing to prove is freedom. One is a tactic, the other is the destination. A man is in a room where someone is raising their voice. The words are pointed. They are meant to land. He listens. He does not shift. He does not blink at the moment designed to make him blink. When the room goes quiet, he says something short. Not because he could not say more, because he already knew that the short thing would be the only thing anyone remembered. He was right. He is always right about this. Not because he is smarter, because he learned at some point to stop spending what he did not need to spend. 7 tactics. None of them require you to be cold. None of them require you to stop feeling things. All of them require you to understand one thing: most of what you give in a conversation was never asked for. You gave it because silence felt like losing, because not reacting felt like absence, because explanation felt like honesty. None of those feelings were wrong. They were just expensive. The man who manages his output is not the man who stopped caring. He is the man who learned to care completely and choose completely what that care becomes in the room. That is not natural. It is built over hundreds of moments where the reactive version showed up, and then slowly fewer of those moments. Think about the last week. One moment where you gave more than the situation required. Not wrong, not weak, just more than it needed. Now think about what would have been different if you had stopped one sentence earlier. If something in this video is still sitting with you, the subscribe button is there. Not for the algorithm. For the next time, you need to be reminded that silence has always been an option.